good afternoon, wherever you happen to find yourself on this planet that we call home. Well, we can't call it anything else, really. There's nowhere else to go. And that is pertinent to everything that we here at Wild Earth TV are trying to achieve for the wilderness areas of our wonderful planet. You are now on a live afternoon game drive in the wilds of the Kruger National Park. My name is James Hendry, and on camera today we have Brian, dressed a little bit like a biker and a little bit like a bushman. Interesting combination of clothing. And on the other vehicle today we have the irascible and highly enthusiastic Brent Leo Smith, and he is being filmed by the diminutive Viam Durenbrak. In the control room today, the sultry tones of Tara Dales return to my left ear, and on D2, that is Director 2, we have the red-haired, fiery temperament of Kirsty McLennan Smith. And then, knocking about the reserve in a small white pickup truck, we have Eugene with a ladder on top and an incredibly large brain, for without him, none of what you're seeing now would take place at all. Now, the afternoon is a balmy sort of 29 degrees, apparently, according to the weather forecast. I don't believe that myself. I think it's probably closer to 27. So it's supposed to be 85 degrees Fahrenheit, but I think it's probably closer to 81. Anyway, it's still very comfortable and very pleasant. There's a gentle breeze blowing from the northeast. That's over my right shoulder there. And it's very pleasantly cool. Now, I feel something of a subduedness about my mood this afternoon. And I was trying to think about why that is. And over the last week or so, we haven't seen one lion on Djuma. And of course, that is not a particularly dire situation at all. It just means that the lions are in flux, or perhaps knocking about elsewhere in this wilderness that we call the Kruger National Park. We only operate on about 1,500 hectares. Djuma and Arathusa are the two farms that we're on. But the lions, of course, can move anywhere they like, within the 3.5 million hectares of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park, of which the Kruger National Park is a piece. It's all very complicated. It might be time for me to draw you another map. But my subduedness came from something I read today, and it's that in about 50 years ago, we think there were about 300,000 lions left in the world. There are now only 20,000 left. Now, that is a very sad statistic. And while 20,000 does sound like quite a lot, when you think about it, in relation to the giant human population, 7 billion souls on planet Earth is a number that is almost completely unfathomable to you and I. 20,000 lions is fewer than the number of people living in the small villages just on the western border of where we live, never mind the rest of the world. So just give a thought to that while we drive around today. I don't think we're going to see any lions this afternoon because there aren't any on Djuma at the moment, and Arathusa was pretty clear of them this morning too. There's nothing wrong with lion conservation in this area, but just think of the fact that there are only 20,000 lions left in the world, and this is an iconic keystone species from which a lot of other conservation issues. So on that fairly somber note, I'm afraid we're going to begin our wonderful game drive. I will attempt to pick your mood up more by finding some of the delights that this incredible wilderness has to offer. Remember, this is a live, interactive game drive safari, and you are welcome to talk to us or ask us questions depending on your bent. Hashtag Safari Live if you're tweeting away like a white-browed scrub robin, or if you are emailing questions at WildEarthTV is how you can get hold of us there. There is no other method. Carrier pigeons will take too long, and Tara's a bit scared of them, and the telephone service is fairly poor, and of course we've spoken about the South African Postal Service now into its 10th month of strike. So, there it is, on we go. My plan today, and therefore Brian's plan, and therefore yours, is to go and find some elephants, perhaps, at Biffles Hook Dam, which is just down the way there. And from there, we're going to head round a little bit to the eastern side, and we're going to try and see if we can't find that young leopard, wonderful fellow called Sindile, Shadow's cub. All right, here we go. Right, I've just tied myself up. We're going to go across straight away to the enthusiastic Brent Leo Smith, see what he's up to, and I will see you in just a little while.
Good afternoon and welcome on the Sunset Safari. My name is Brent Leo Smith. I'm going to be one of your guides for the next 3 hours. On camera with me today is Wim, who's also sometimes known as the Wildebeest. For those of you who've been watching for a while, this particular spot at my feet here is where James found a dead honey badger, a very smelly, bloated dead honey badger. And I have been back to check once, and I said on the Sunrise Safari I was going to come back and check. Here we can find just a few tufts of hair. You can see the black and white from the body and from the back. And while we got off to look at the vehicle, from the vehicle to look at this, just over my right hand shoulder here, I can hear the incredible buzzing of flies. And that sort of tells me that the rest of that honey badger is there. We've had a look. I'm going to take you around to have a look with the vehicle now. But you can see there's quite a lot of disturbed ground around me, and there's even more where the rest of that honey badger carcass is. So let's loop around and go have a look quickly. Very little left there, just a few tufts of hair, and we could hear those flies buzzing from where that was. And we just moved around a little bit, and there is the rest of the carcass. And as I walk closer, you'll see actually all the flies come off it. Very, very little left. Not as smelly now. A lot of the stomach content stuff has obviously been popped. And you notice there's quite a lot of sort of disturbed ground all around me. And it looks like some animals actually had a fight over this carcass. And they didn't eat very much of it. It looks like more that they played with it more than anything else. And what leads me to believe from the tracks I can see on the road, and from the general disturbance around here, I'm pretty sure it was hyena that did this. But even then still, they didn't eat too much of the carcass. So very, very interesting. And so far, they might have nibbled a little bit. I think these exposed ribs we're seeing here are more than likely from a bateleur or a tawny eagle. Initially, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, maybe the vultures found it. But there's none of the telltale signs. There's no sort of that white downy feathers on the ground and in the trees around, so not vultures. And it looks like more hyenas were having fun with it, playing with it, and it even looks like they've rolled on it. So you can see all around the disturbed ground, they haven't really been feeding on it. The skull is still intact, the bones are still there. Here's the head, and so I definitely think that they almost were playing with it, rolling on it. Hyenas like smelly things. Don't think they ate any of it, but I think they did roll on it, which is quite interesting in itself. There we go, that's the end of the honey badger. I'm sure we'll come back and check again at some stage, see what's left. But in the meantime, let's go see what else we can find out there in this African wilderness. So, we are live at the moment, and we've just been watching the flies feast off what's left of a honey badger and lay their eggs in it. And one of the amazing things about carcasses and things like that, although a lot of people consider them quite gross or quite yuck or yucky, they are really important, and they become tiny little ecosystems in themselves. So we have lots of different things there, and there'll be carrion beetles. There will be, oh, I hear something. Hang on a second. Oh, it's a game drive vehicle, not to worry. So the carrion beetles, flies, maggots, larvae, everything will be feeding off this little carcass. Just hang on, I can see some confused looks. I'm just going to let them know what's here. Legs. Next is remnants of a honey badger carcass here, if you're interested. Sorry guys, now everyone's getting a little bit interested. It's on the junction of Central and Vulture's Nest. Probably 50 meters onto Vulture's Nest is a termite mound on the eastern side. It's just behind the termite mound. Hello everyone! Very well in yourself? Nice to see you back. Oh, hopefully you can find some leopards this afternoon. They're being a little bit... Yeah. We looked for that youngster again this morning, but he's moved into Hoffman's by the looks of things.
Oh, has he?
Yeah. Alright guys, enjoy. We'll see you later. Sorry about that folks, just having my afternoon meeting with one of the other guides who's working here at the moment. And we're going to continue on to see what else we can find. As I was saying, those carcasses and corpses, is what you want to call, become their own little ecosystems. And so you'll have multiple different types of insects that will feed off that. You will get horn moths, which are not so much in this case, but in other carcasses. You guys will know them. They're very closely related to what are called fish moths. The moths that eat holes in your clothes that you put mothballs down for. And since we're on carcasses so far and we haven't found any tracks of anything just yet, and we might meander off to that buffalo that was killed by the Nkuhuma pride a while ago to see how that carcass is integrated. Definitely go have a look and speak a little bit more about those horn moths or fish moths that I'm sure quite a few of you have had to battle with at home, eating holes in your linen and what we use mothballs to keep out. So it's a very similar species, and the species that eat horns will also eat clothes, so it's a double battle for us. Fortunately out here there's a lot more horns for them to eat than linen, so we don't have to battle. We might get a little bit of signal back up, but I'll move it as quick as possible. Sorry about that, but that is the nature of being live and out in the bush. Sometimes the terrain does argue with us, and as the technology improves, we pop it in, and that should hopefully improve a lot of those little glitches that are still being worked out. But it is the nature of being live and being out in the African wilds. So, warm day today. It's not a particularly hot day. It's actually very, very pleasant temperature at the moment. But it is still hot, warm and dry. So after we've had a look at what's happened to that Nkuhuma carcass, I'm probably slowly going to meander towards the Buffalo's Hook waterhole, see if there's any action around there. I did see some elephant tracks crossing the road in that direction, so hopefully we might be able to find some eddies. And who knows, it seems to be the spot for new leopards to pop up. And I know Scott had Makombo, a male leopard I haven't seen yet, at Buffalo's Hook Dam a few safaris ago, and Andrew and I had an yet to be named, but yours calls him Djuma, which means run, because he runs away from the cars during the day, an adult male leopard. And very interesting that he's pushing this far. Tingana seems to have set up his territory around the Moati, sometimes pushing up towards this area on Drakensberger and then south. Traditionally, this has always been Mvula's territory, and now there's also this newcomer from the north, who's also a very big male from what I've heard from the people who've seen him. And so there's a vacuum where Tingana hasn't extended into yet, but this male has filled, and Mvula has now moved his territory much further east, and he's been seen very regularly to the east of us. He hasn't made any forays back towards Djuma in quite some time, so whether he is ever going to or not, I can't say just yet. But male leopard territories do constantly, over their course of their sort of time at the top, will change shape and merge and get smaller and larger in different directions, depending on pressure from other leopards and obviously access to females and access to prey species. So going back to carrion eaters and insects that feed off dead animals and decomposing animals, we're chatting about horn moths. We're actually not too far away from where that buffalo skull is, so we'll have a good look to see if any horn moths have invaded into that skull yet, into the bosses and the horns. But Maggie was wondering, do they ever actually attack and eat living keratin and living horn? Maggie, not to my knowledge. As far as I know, they will only ever really go after the dead animals, and the reason for this is probably that the living animals would be able to scratch out the larvae, and the itch would probably drive them mad, and they would be able to sort of scratch it or get rid of it, or maybe even the oxpeckers might eat it. Who knows? But as far as I know, they only do attack sort of dead horn, although in theory most of a buffalo's horn is already dead. Like our hair, the ends of our hair is dead, and it is already dead keratin, and the growing points are only right at the bases. And the same would be similar with an animal's horns. It is keratin, it's the exact same substance that our hair and fingernails is made up of. Or is that a truck? It's not, it's a hyena. That carcass is old carcass is just around the corner, and who knows, it might have even been moved and I can't find it, but still interesting to look and nice to follow up on something that we actually saw happen live. We saw the Nkuhumas catch that buffalo live, and we can now see how that buffalo, even though it's been dead for over a month, is still giving back to nature in terms of nutrients to other animals. Just coming up on to the east of us is where that fantastic sighting took place. Happened under that large marula tree over there, but the hyenas did drag the sort of skull and part of the spinal column out onto this open area, and some of the ribs, and there it is. So let's see if the horn moths have moved in yet. There is a possibility they haven't, due to the fact that it's been winter and there aren't that many of them around. Here we go. So what I'm looking for with horn moths would be a tiny little, almost perfect circle that has been drilled into the horn, and that is where it is, and it doesn't look like there are any. I'm going to pop this up here. Tell me if that's okay, if you can see it nicely there. Oh my goodness, look, we have stalkers. We have stalkers. They're just following us around, hoping we find the animals for them. So, after that rude interruption, we're back to the buffalo and the horned moths. So, as I said, we'll be looking for almost perfect little circles that'll be drilled by the adults into the horn, and then the larvae will be there and start eating the horn. And they have this tiny little sort of, when they pupate, it almost looks like soil that they're made up. It's made up of feces and their saliva, and that is the sort of housing for the babies before they become out as adults. But I think we're not going to see any holes in this buffalo skull till the rains come and the horn moths come out again. A lot of insects, but we do have some very interesting little creatures inside, which I'm going to try show you. You're going to see. I'm going to try to think how to show you this. So I'm going to try get inside here of them, and they're moving around quite a lot. See if we can get in somewhere else. But there are quite a few scarab beetles or carrion beetles, and you can see there's still quite a lot of sinew and little bits of meat, and even ants that are still feeding off what's left of this buffalo. And those very almost archaic creatures, as soon as I moved, they run to the darkness to hide, and they look like they're not insects, they're actually arthropods. So if you can see a little bit in there, whoopsie, sorry.
Watch out, minimal focus distance.
Okay, so am I too close?
Yep.
Too close? Let me try up here. Is that better?
Oh.
So that in there you can just, where's he gone? But so arthropods are like, wood lice is probably something you would know that looks very similar to them. And they are all in and around in every little crevice, eating what's left of the sinews. And in here there's one. Let me try. Chase them out for you guys. There we go. They disappear into the tiniest little hole. That's a carrion beetle. But if you imagine wood lice like you would find under a sort of damp log in a temperate forest, they're sort of grey, many legs, so an arthropod, they're not actually an insect. And there's quite a lot of them in different sizes actually inside here. And they, as well as the carrion beetles, will eat what was left of the brain matter. And a buffalo skull, no animal, not even hyenas and lions, are strong enough to get through this incredibly strong frontal part of the skull. And same with elephants and that, and you'll find that these tiny little insects will eat everything that's left inside. So this might look like there's nothing left to eat for us or even for a hyena, but for all these insects and arthropods, there's still so much that this carcass can give. There we go. Pop him back, and we'll definitely have to come check once the rains are here and we can see those perfect little cylindrical holes that the horn moths make. Don't worry guys, I'll wash my hands before I have my dinner. Or will I? just had a quick chat about some new leopards that were seen around here, in particular the one Scott saw a few safaris ago called the Makombo. And Heidi was wondering, does Makombo have his own territory yet, or is he nomadic? He's recently independent, so he is nomadic. He might still be in contact with his mom, but as far as I know, he is now basically independent from his mother. He's just over 2 years old, if I remember correctly. So he is independent. He does not yet have his own territory. It's still going to be a few years before he starts competing for territory. So we're going to start slowly making our way towards the Buffelshoek waterhole. And now that James can't follow us around and try to steal all our animals again, we'll go see what he's been up to.
Welcome back to Jigga. Little rough of my colleague Brent there, I feel, to be casting aspersions on my A, navigational skills, and B, intentions as to whether I was following him or not. Well, next time you see him, just remind him that he said his route was going to be tougher than the road he chose to drive. We are now on Cheetah Cut Line, which is the far eastern boundary of Djuma. Off to our east is Torchwood, and we're just looking for some tracks. We had some elephant tracks coming from Buffelshoek Dam. Clearly the elephants are drunk. They're probably around midday, and they've unfortunately headed off east. So that particular herd is not going to be viewed by us tonight. But that's not to say that there aren't any other herds around, so that's what we're going to continue trying to find. Every time I come past this tree, I just have to have a quick look and see. There is a parrot's nest here, and I just heard some parrots behind us. We'll just stop briefly. Oops, I must remember to stop the car completely. That is a parrot's nest, brown-headed parrot. There's a little hole there, and I just heard some parrots behind us. Very metallic screeching sound, a bit like scraping your nails on a blackboard. And if you don't know what a blackboard is, you're probably quite young. It is what we used to use in school to learn from. So it used to go, they make a sort of sound. I'll try and scratch it. There, that's what they sound like. They don't sound like anything like that. It's just a metallic sort of screech. And behind us you can hear beautiful lilting call of the magpie shrike. Brian, there's a rattling cisticola there, and we hear them all the time. Oh no, sit still. I knew it wouldn't. I knew I was setting you up there for something awkward. There was a rattling cisticola on the Balanites Magami tree just over there. You must, just while I tell you about the rattling cisticola, you must appreciate something about Brian here. Brian is 6'4", correct? Mm-hmm. He was a trapeze artist at one stage of his life, and the shapes to which he contorts so that the camera moves in a smooth and orderly fashion are quite something. So if you see my eyes suddenly darting behind the camera like that, it's probably because Brian has folded himself into 4 pieces. Anyway, the rattling cisticola is a bird we hear often, going alarm calling at all sorts of things. But we seldom see it because it doesn't sit still for any length of time, and it often isn't in the top, well, it does often sit in the tops of trees, but because it's so tiny, it's only about that big, it's often obscured by branches and leaves. Anyway, every time I spot one and ask a cameraman to turn the camera towards it, the blasted thing flies off immediately. Oh, very nice lilac-breasted roller over there. Stunning. Now, as some of you may have known, the last time Brent and I drove together, we had a little shangaan off, as it were, and that bird is called veve, an onomatopoeic Piic word, and it's because it goes fa, 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 fa when it calls. Again, this is an extremely poor impersonation, but that's what it does, and that's why it's called veve. Very untuneful call for such a amazingly beautiful bird. Lovely. Insect eater, and will jump down from that perch and pick insects off the ground and then fly back to another perch, or the same perch, but very different from say a drongo, which likes to hawk its insects from a perch. So we're now on the southern boundary, and on the southern boundary we had a brief sighting the other day. I've come past you about 4 times since then. We had a sighting of Quarantine, a 3-year-old young male leopard, a daughter to the Queen of Djuma, Kurula, the peaceful one, who we haven't seen for some time. Well, we saw her briefly about a week ago. So because my young males are nomadic, they can be in the same area for some time. And so I've just been coming to check in this area for the last week to see. I am... Ooh, that looks like an elephant. Kathleen, I'm going to make your impersonation just now. There's an elephant in front of us, and there seems to be one lying on the road. We're going to stop right here so that we can just... so we don't disturb it, but that is astonishing. It's a little elephant lying on the road. Oh, that's wonderful. Isn't that great? Let's move a little bit forward. I'm just going to roll forward a bit. I'll turn off and I'll just roll down the hill here. See if Jiga's old and fairly rusty limbs can get us there without my having to turn on the engine. Now, Brian and I were very much hoping to find old Wrinkly Bottom. And that looks very much like the pose that Wrinkly Bottom might strike. Look at that little thing. There are lots of them here, lots of elephants. Let's have a look. I'll try and get my binoculars out on him. Radio's going everywhere. Is that him, Brian?
Not too sure.
No, it's not. It's not Wrinkly Bottom, but it is a very tired young calf. And of course that is entirely in keeping with their normal behavior. The calves will often lie down when they're with the adults, when the adults are feeding, because they do get very tired. Well, this one seems to be trying to stand up. Let me go a little bit further forward. I don't know what's going on here. No, it's not struggling to stand up. I think it was actually probably just rubbing its head in the dust there. Wasn't that nice to see? And look how the older one stands next to it and supports it, checks that it's okay with a little touch from the trunk. And of course, if it had really struggled to get up, the older ones would definitely have almost picked it up. They'll put the trunk underneath and pick it up. Very sweet. It's not that small, that calf, you know. What on earth is it doing? That calf's probably about, I'd say, tusks haven't erupted yet, so not yet 18 months. But why it's head-butting the ground, I couldn't tell you. It's so sweet. Oh, that's wonderful. Shall we sneak a little bit further forward? I was hoping we could just roll, but I don't think... Oh, we are going to roll. It's going to take a little while. Jiga's aging bones take a while to sort of lubricate themselves. It's laying down again, you see that? Astonishing behavior from the little one. Now we are quite close, so I'm just going to be fairly quiet. The cows will naturally be slightly more nervous when we're this close to such a small calf, and so we have to gain their trust. Every time we see a herd of elephants, we just need to think carefully about regaining their trust. And look at that classic winter feeding behavior. You can see why the combretum trees are taking an absolute hammering at the moment. Their bark is providing now the bulk of the nutrition required by these elephants. They are wonderfully unaffected by us being this close. It's so special. And I've said a few times, when I started working in this area 15 years ago, you went into a lot of elephant sightings backwards with the car started, so that you always had a forward escape route, because they tended to be so much more obviously upset by us. Now, things are very different, and that's not to say that we don't treat the elephants with extreme respect all the time. It's just wonderful. Look at that little thing. That was the youngster that was standing almost a chaperone on the road, and that's also quite a common behavior, there to be a young chaperone. That's a young bull, or is it? No, it's not. It's a young cow. Now sampling the same piece of tree that the older cow, probably mother to the young calf, was eating just now. Much easier to eat somebody else's combretum stump than pick your own, I think. People, I can't tell you how wonderful it is that these elephants have allowed us to drive so close without any form of reaction. That youngster could easily have felt very cornered by us coming down the road, but just didn't. Beautiful. And you'll notice now when we look at the elephants that their hips are starting to show. I think that they are in a little bit of nutritional distress. That's not to say that things are dire by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly tougher than they might be. That's this knobthorn, I think, is going to take something of a hammering now. And then just wondering why the we've got a question from Teresa in London town about the question as to whether there is some form of toothache in the baby. Teresa, I don't think there's any form of toothache. Brian? Toothache?
Nope, don't think so.
No, Teresa, I think it was just playing, you know. Young elephants are very playful. And I think you'll find it was just knocking its head in the dust for fun, basically, rolling in the sand like a youngster would, or in fact like I do when I go to the beach. But I don't think it's got a toothache. I'd be interested to know why you think it perhaps had a toothache, Teresa. Perhaps send us through another answer for what particular aspect of the behavior made you think that, because I'd be very interested to know. I feel like you might know something that I don't. You can see how 18-month-old elephant now starting to be able to use its trunk quite nicely, but nothing like as competently as an older one. Okay, so there's an interesting sort of question from Laura in Pennsylvania, which probably dovetails quite nicely with the question from London. Maybe he or she is teething, and that's why she was rubbing her head against the side. I'm going to just use the word she, I think possibly a young cow, rubbing her sort of the side of her jaw against the ground. Now, Laura, that's quite possible, I suppose, and yeah, I see kind of where the angle of this discussion is going. So yes, possibly some kind of teething pain. Yeah, I don't know. I suspect it was just playing, but certainly I don't see why they wouldn't experience some kind of teething pain, especially considering that the tusks erupt from so high up in the skull, from right underneath the nasal cavity. So yeah, I'm sure they do experience some kind of pain when those tusks do come out. They are, in case some of you are wondering, the incisor teeth. So your two front teeth are basically what an elephant's tusks are. So they're sort of modified. I'm just going to train my powerful binoculars on that youngster and see if I can see any form of eruption. But I can't. But what I can see, and what you can just see on the head there, sorry, as Brian's coming out, is the hair. And we spoke a little bit about it yesterday, about the fact that elephants are bald. And I said, no, they're not quite, you know. The youngsters are not bald. And there you can see a very fine covering of quite wiry hair. There's the wind blowing up a bit from the northeast, like I said earlier. Very strange sort of weather for this time of year. Cloudy, quite a lot of smoke in the air. It's chilly this morning, but those clouds are not winter clouds. They seem to be laden with some form of moisture, although I really don't think that rain is in the offing. Very lovely though to see. So there are a few species of trees left that the elephants are eating. Firstly, you saw the one eating a Cumbretum apiculatum, or red bush willow tree, eating the bark, especially the rootstock they like. And then the other one is the weeping wattle, or Peltophorum africanum, which the elephant behind us is now feeding on. Not in an ideal position for us to film, I'm afraid, but I don't want to start the car just yet, in case we do give them a bit of a fright. So the weeping wattle, the red bush willow, and the knobthorn are all taking a bit of a hammering, but interestingly, I've seen them eating less and less knobthorn. There's another elephant miles down the road there. See that? Another herd there. Way down the road. Isn't that nice? I think that's part of another herd. Doesn't look like an adult to me. And here comes this fairly substantial cow into view. She's just crossing the road, coming to have a little bit of an investigation of us. She's definitely watching us quite carefully. Like I say, always so nice when they're this confiding to us. We've seen how that little one was using its trunk and just learning to get it under control, because it does take a long time for them to get the trunk under control. And Gracie, aged 8 in Ohio, a very clever question, Gracie. You want to know if the trunk is used to pull things out of the elephant's eye. So if an elephant has a sore eye or gets something in their eye, will they pull it out with the trunk? Gracie, absolutely they do, you know. The trunk is very good at scratching the eye, and you often see elephants rubbing their eyes with their trunks. And so if they get something in their eyes, I'm sure they definitely rub their eyes with their trunks, and that probably helps to get it out. The other thing they have, and we'll see if Brian can find it on this big cow here, is long eyelashes. And those long eyelashes, Gracie, help protect the eye from, now look at that stick, just about sticking into the eye there. Those long eyelashes help it to avoid being spiked in the eye by the sticks near which they feed, especially at this time of the year when there's no nice green grass for them to eat. She's a wizened cow, this one. She's got very torn up ears. I think she spent a long time wandering the woodlands of the Sabi Sands. A very experienced old girl with her youngster. The little one is now playing, again getting in the way of Mum's tea. Help with the stick. Look how amazingly dexterous they are. It's just fantastic to see. Look at that. Now the little one, I think, is looking for a bit of comfort. Maybe it will try and suckle. At the moment, just trying to emulate its mother. It doesn't have any other youngsters to play with, and of course they definitely do play with each other when they're in a herd and there's more than one. And this is just a little herd that is not what we'd call a sort of, it's not a very defined unit, so it will join up with other herds where it can play with some, where the little ones can play together. So sweet. Look at that. Trying desperately to emulate Mum. And just going back to this little one and what he was doing on the ground there when we arrived, rubbing his head there, bottom in the air. And Hilary, I think you've probably hit the nail on the head. You say he was probably just having a toddler's temper tantrum. Well, that's probably precisely what was going on. I have a young nephew who is about the same age as this elephant, and he is just getting into doing precisely that. When people are upset with him, he simply lies on the ground with his bottom in the air. So perhaps, Hilary, you're absolutely correct that this young elephant and my nephew William are behaving in the same way. Perhaps he was chastised for something. You can see how he's seeking comfort now from the younger cow, who's very clearly not his mother. She's not lactating at all. And look how she's standing, as though she's leaning against the doorpost. Chilled to the max, as I think Andrew might say. Brian, you might say that too? No, you wouldn't say that. Yeah, you can see he's very playful. I'm saying he now. I think I can see evidence of he-ness, if you like. I think this is a young bull. Oh, there we go. I'd like a Tultiforum tree. She did sort of look like she was going to push it over. There. You hear that? She's made a lovely rumbling sound. And as soon as that tree broke, a drongo came flying in to see if it hadn't dislodged any insects that it might like to eat. Right, I'm going to try and go back a little, but I don't know how she's going to react. But she is pretty close by. Didn't even turn a hair. The little one did. Seeking comfort. And you will see we are now only about 20 meters, about no, less than that, I'd say 15 meters, about 45 feet from this elephant, if that. And for the moment she remains completely relaxed with our presence, which is such a privilege. You can get a real appreciation there for the hair, first of all, and secondly, of course, the eyelashes. Look at that. Gracie, see the eyelashes? That stops things going into the eye. You might even be able to hear her chewing the sticks. can now hear quite a lot more. We've turned up the volume. You'll be able to hear the sticks crunching in her mouth. You'll be able to hear all the elephants feeding around us. There are only 5 of them. And they're the only sounds that we can hear at the moment. You see, chewing off the bark, not eating the actual fibers of the wood, but chewing the bark off. That's where the moisture is carried in the trees. Watch this. Oh, this is great. Jeez, look at that. Isn't that fantastic? She's putting on a real show for us. She'll eat that bark now, I think. There we go. So that all of that bark will go in. Nice piece of strip that she got off there without having to chew it off the tree. And now the little one is trying to do exactly what Mum does. And he's failing dismally. You can see very clearly now the difference in the coordination between her mother's incredibly dexterous trunk and the little one's rather less dexterous one. And as I've said before, there are probably up to 100,000 muscle and nerve fibers in that trunk. And so it's not easy to learn to control. So the elephants take up to 2 years before they're able to use it effectively. And you can see that the mother always astounds me. We have been seeing the odd elephant without a trunk, or not without one, but with one sort of sawn off, so it doesn't have that prehensile tip. And I don't know how on earth those elephants survive when you see how important that prehensile tip is. And by prehensile I mean like a hand, able to hold and pull and twist and manipulate things. That big crash crunch you heard just now was an elephant in addition to the 5 that we're looking at now, possibly off to the right hand side. Wasn't that one there, but there may be one further in the bush, I think, feeding their way through the woodland. Now we're going to go back to the cow, who is just putting on a remarkable show of making this Peltiforum africanum bush into pelto mince. Listen to that. You can see how it comes out of the mouth totally stripped free of any bark. It's a remarkably efficient little production system. The elephant's teeth, and there are molars in the back of her mouth that are basically the size, if I think about it. Think about a size, say American size 8 or UK size 7 shoe. That's basically the size of a big elephant's molar. So while we're watching this elephant eating, you can see that right-hand tusk is being used predominantly over the left-hand tusk. I'm just sorry, I'm just going to have to move out of the way. There's a car behind us, and it's not showing any intention of enjoying the elephants with us. See, the little one took a bit of exception to that. And she's just making a grumble. Sorry, I'm just going to yell at these guys. Here, Bob! Come on! They've stopped their car right in front of the elephants. Very sadly brought our wonderful elephant sighting something to a close. Anyway, while we wait for them to disappear, Ignatius Michael Filjoen, aka Itch, aka Ich, aka probably a number of other things, you would like to know about that predominance of tusk usage. So the elephant, the cow we've been watching, seems to have been favoring the right-hand side. Now there is quite a lot of evidence to show that they are indeed left or right-hand tusked, but to me what's more interesting is that they're also more likely to twist their trunks in a certain direction predominantly. So an elephant may, if you can think of it coiling its tusk around something and then pulling, they normally do that either predominantly from the right or predominantly from the left, and that results in the side, one side of the trunk becoming more worn than the other. So thank you for that question. Oh, there are a whole lot more coming through here, Brian. See them there? There are a whole lot more elephants coming this way. These look like, to me, I'm going to guess here, they look like swaggering young bulls. I'm going to be very interested to see if that's what they are. They're kind of swaggering through the bush in young teenage style. Imagine some teenage boys coming through a shopping mall, buoying each other up with brave talk. Yeah, and the cow is immediately, she's got her hackles up. She's instantly irritated. Look at this. Classic. This is classic. This is unbelievable. So it's not aggressive. It's just kind of, what do you guys want? What are you doing here? Behave yourselves, or I'll give you what for. So the little one went with her to greet and look, they're all greeting the little one. Patting her on the head, they are young bulls, a little gang, but they thought better than to try and challenge mum. Now this is a wonderful little greeting ceremony we've had here. 3 young bulls have come in, and the youngsters, especially the little one, you can see how the little one went with mum to go and say hello, and also the young cow, who was looking after the baby when we first saw him lying on the ground, went to say hi to the young bulls. Oh, that's great. I'm going to reverse a little bit, see if we can't get a slightly better view. Another one coming in. There's another bull coming in now. So the greeting ceremony. So we've seen lots of greeting ceremonies while we've been here. Hyenas have the rather unfortunate habit of sniffing each other's genitals to say hello. The elephants don't do that a huge amount. They do a little bit, but they also put their trunks in each other's mouths as a form of greeting. They rub heads. It's normally some kind of trunk touching, and then they will put their trunks in each other's mouths just to say hi. There's a little bit of possible genital investigation, I suppose, but not anything like the hyenas. So those are the young bulls now playing with the little one, and you can see Mum has relaxed enough to let them take the little one off and horse about with him. Can an elephant horse about, Brian?
I don't see why not.
I don't see why not. This is really special to see. And it's only through spending extended periods with animals like this that we get this kind of insight into them. No good just coming in, having a quick look and moving on and seeing what else you can find. Here comes another little one charging in. Unfortunately, they are south of our reserve, so we can't go there. Sorry, another car just went past, but they didn't seem to mind this one. And a little question from Brooklyn, aged 10. When an elephant's hair comes out, or when it tears its hair, does it bleed profusely? Brooklyn, no, they don't bleed very much, from if they lose their hair. Their skin is very thick, and so in order for them to bleed a lot, they really have to have a very bad cut. Here, look at them. Look at the little one is playing now with the young bulls that have come in. Wonder if there isn't a water hole just to the south of us here that perhaps they've been drinking at. Now they've come and they've reunited with the rest of the herd that's been feeding. But isn't it classic? I mean, the reason it's so interesting to me is that we get so many questions that are sort of anthropomorphic in nature. So we put our human emotions and behaviors onto animals. And I find with elephants, you can almost exactly parallel human behavior so often with the way elephants behave. So they split into these age cohorts where the young bulls will go off just like young teenage boys will. The young cows will stay within the herd, but they'll congregate together, and they split into these age cohorts and go and do various activities on their own, and then come together again like this in a herd. Oof, now they're coming very nice and close to us. Let's hope that they give us a good show. Well, they already have, haven't they? This is so special. Wow. It's interesting, they're kind of gathering together in a slightly defensive formation because the wind is now blowing towards them, so they can definitely smell us. I'm sure they could before, maybe now and then, but every time the wind blows towards them, they do have a bit of a smell. So this is clearly a young bull who is now relieving himself. Thank you for that. And I mean, he's not far from being independent age. I think he's probably about 18. Maybe the leader of this little gang of bulls. So the little one comes to look to him for a bit of assurance. Say hi. Exactly like a young boy would if he was around a whole lot of teenage boys. He might go and try and sort of fit in and say hi. And this young bull is showing a little bit of it's not aggression, it's more, he's not testing himself, exactly like a human would. He just stood up there and shook his head as if to say, look how big I am, and in many respects he's absolutely correct, I suppose. There's one right behind us that I won't be able to film because it's basically blocked by the aerial. I think they're going to cross the road behind us. A couple crossing in front of us. Oh, I see. Brooklyn, aged 10, sorry. You wanted to know about a tear. The skin tears, does it bleed profusely? Not if the hair comes out. Sorry about that. Brooklyn, yes, they will bleed. But remember, this, like I said, the skin is very thick. And so they don't bleed quite like we do. And I think that's also why things like ticks struggle to get hold of them. Ahe, utubonile tindlophu. Auntie, tipilava ngopfu. Mara ayethu kumanga. Okay. Andiri nchumu. Akunamali. Miyakwi. Okay, all right. Kuna tingala le. Okay, akuna tingala kwala. Okay, inkomu. Ubabzele ku tshama la. Gorilla kahle. Okay, can see it. Okay. That was Texon from Djuma, and he was taking a game driver. He's heading off towards Biffle's Hook where they can drive, and there are some lions there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Nkuhuma Pride, for this, just have a little quick lion update while we look at these elephants. Nkuhuma Pride, which is our mainstay of lion viewing, now 4 adult females, 2 youngsters, and 1 vastly improvingly good-looking young male called a junior. They have gone north into Manuleti, and there's an unusual grouping of lions on Biffle's Hook at the moment. We don't know who they are. Apparently a young male and a couple of young females. Quite skittish around the cars, and I don't know where the Birmingham boys are either. They are the sort of new men around town, 5 young males who seem to have taken over this place. Brian, just go up a bit again there, if you don't mind. You see that bulge? That bulge I saw on a cow the other day, not the same cow, and there was some wonderful information given by a few of our viewers. That is called an umbilical hernia, which apparently is quite common in elephants and does normally resolve itself. That's not a normal thing. So an umbilical hernia doesn't look very comfortable. But she seems a lot more comfortable than the one we saw the other day. You can see how they've adopted a slightly defensive stance around the little ones when Texan came past. Now that's not to cast aspersions on Texan at all, but he had a big noisy Land Cruiser with a diesel engine, and they're deaf with a lot of people on it, and that's basically why they were nervous. And And I'm not really sure how an umbilical hernia occurs. I think it probably occurs from some kind of strain, possibly due to birth. But this elephant is not about to give birth. She's not pregnant as far as I can tell. Let's watch. Here she goes past us. That's a young bull. That's not a cow. I think. Sometimes quite difficult to tell. There, they're talking to each other. Look, look. So sweet. As I said to you, they will play, and if they can find someone to play with, then that's even better. And that little one is now so excited to find a young friend who's a bit older than him. He's not attempting what you think he's attempting, I don't think. He's just horsing about, and that's often a kind of dominance display, but he's much smaller than the one he's trying to dominate. So sweet. It's quite interesting, Brian. I think that's a tambuti tree, you know. Let me just get my powerful binoculars out so I can have a look. So that they're eating there, and it's not, you know, it's not a tambuti tree. It looks like, you're welcome to contradict me, anybody. It looks like Catanarigum spinosa. No, it's not even that. I don't know what that tree is. I must have driven past it 100 times. I couldn't tell you what it is. I'll get a piece of it when we leave, and then I shall rectify that situation. Right. So, nice question from unknown source about whether, when those bulls come into must eventually, will they go off on their own, or will they go off in a sort of in a cohort? Well, must doesn't really have a huge, well, it does have a little bit to do with it. Bulls don't dislike each other necessarily when they come into must. What will happen before that, though, is that when they come into their first must, they will start to become extremely irritating to the cows. And the matriarch will eventually tell them to get lost. And she'll do that quite violently. And then they will go and live on their own, or in a group of young bulls. So in this herd, we've seen there's a cohort of similarly aged bulls. They may well go off and live on their own together. Then when they do come into must eventually, now must, for those of you who don't know, is a heightened state of testosterone that all elephant bulls go into. It starts at about 17 or 18 years, but it can last for a few days then. When they get up to 35 and 40, when they're in their prime, big bulls, then it can last up to a year in some of them before dying down again. When they are in must, they will be a lot more kind of cantankerous, a bit more, I hate to use the word aggressive out here, but yes, they may be slightly more aggressive. In the same way that a testosterone-charged man is probably a little bit more aggressive than a less testosterone-charged man. This is a fantastic elephant sighting. wonder what that tree is. I just can't figure it out. Very thorny. And we had a little bit earlier, we had one of them shake his head. He's the oldest of the young bulls. He's a rather kind of men's health model type of bull, a bit like Scott Dyson, where he's got perfectly formed tusks and he's a good looking chap. And I'm just trying to find him. He's gone down there, I think, down off to the right of your screen. He shook his head at us. Now, what he's doing there, nice question from Skipper in Ontario. You're saying, do they see the car as an inanimate object when they do that, or what's the deal? And basically what they're doing, Skipper, I don't believe that's the name your mother gave you, but it is quite a good nickname. I've never had a good nickname like that, but that's not the point. The point is, when they shake their heads like that, they are showing a slight, it depends on the animal and the situation. In that state, this is a young bull trying to impose himself. He's just coming into adulthood, and so he's shaking his head and saying, well, you know, what do you guys want, kind of thing. And just testing to see if he makes us afraid, which clearly he didn't. And so simply because we can interpret his behavior like that. Now, if a big adult bull in must shook his head at us like that, we would disappear quite fast. We would reverse out of the way and let him have his space. Likewise, if a big matriarch did that, same thing. She'd be saying, you're in my way, I don't like you being here, I'm warning you, move away. Now, that is when people talk about aggressive animals, they don't consider the warning signs that are often given. So, an elephant, a big adult bull who shakes his head, or a cow who shakes her head, is giving a warning, a very clear, precise warning that says, get out of the way, you're making me uncomfortable. When a young bull does it, he's testing himself. And you can see he very quickly lost interest and pressed on and went somewhere else. Nice one, Skipper, thank you. Right, now from this elephant herd, now when you see Brent, okay, you're about to see him, and I am doing a Brian. When you see Brent next, he is with Sindile. Now Sindile, of course, was where I was going to go before I came to the elephants. So when you see him, please tell him that for him to accuse me of following him is a gross unfairness when he has taken my route. Please enjoy Sindile. We're going to sit with these elephants for a little bit longer, but enjoy Sindile and the great tracker, Brent Leo Smith, and we'll see you a little bit later.
Welcome back, everyone. And I hear Commander Bond has been speaking ill, and what he failed to mention to you guys is the fact that they had lost Sindile and they called us to come find him again. So we weren't following anyone, they needed help. But we have found him, but after quite an adventure, VM and I got thoroughly stuck in the drainage line, and we had to actually get the jack out, jack the back of the car up, put rocks underneath, and we managed to get out. So we actually weren't stuck, because the actual definition of being stuck is when you have to call someone to pull you out. If you can get yourself out, you were just temporarily stationary. But anyway, I'm much sure you'd much rather look at Sindile, who's lying in a beautiful bed of Timberti leaves at the moment. So he has brought us into one of the more challenging areas. I definitely wouldn't have tried to get in here during dark, but we did manage to get through. We're actually on a little peninsula between two drainage lines, and we Fortunately, he didn't cross both, he only crossed one. And the flies seem to be annoying him, as they were me while I was jacking the car. Oh, tired kitty. Be interesting to see when he stands up what his state of stomach is. I think he still looks quite happy. He's definitely not very, very hungry yet, but he might be a bit hungrier than he was a few days ago. And certainly he's catching all sorts of little things while we're not with him. Off air the other day, I even saw him eat a grasshopper, which is a very good form of protein if you're a young male leopard being left by yourself, although you would better be served catching a steenbok, but if there are no steenbok around, a grasshopper will do. Well, we're going to cross quickly to James, who's about to get bathed.
Hi everybody, just look at that, just quickly, while Sindile is sleeping and not being his normal entertaining self. Just look at this incredible, as the golden light catching the dust as this elephant gives himself a sand bath. Isn't it wonderful? Just helps get rid of the itches and the ectoparasites that might be affecting his skin. It's so nice to see. Look at this. Isn't that beautiful? That is just stunning. Oh wow. I tell you what, it makes me want to go and lie down in that berm. He's basically on a mitre drain that's been dug. Makes me want to lie down in there and do the same thing. I probably won't do it while the elephants are here though. Isn't that wonderful? Alright, let's go back to that magnificent little leopard and I'll see you just now.